Here we're going for like 160,000 miles and repairs. We were replacing engines, and then I thought, well, we should try to do one car every other year to prevent. We put a new engine in the car, and then the rear end went. I mean, so now you're looking at another expense. Then when you have an older, like the Ford Crown Vic, you can't get a rear end anymore. You have to go to the junkyard to look for one. We've done that in the past, and then that rear end failed. But I think we could manage it.
And then with the overtime, I would like to see it be $100,000, which I think is an average of the 2 previous years. I realize it's an estimate, and then you can't predict that, especially when it comes to police protection. Do you think that would be a reasonable line item?
Well, perhaps you and I can discuss that before the next.
Why don't you and I discuss that, and I would like to see that lowered.
Just to let you know where we're at.
But you and I will discuss that, but at least the $30,000 will come out, so hopefully that will at least help the balanced budget.
Just to make a few comments to understand where overtime does come from. We all realize we're a small department, we do the best we could. We do realize we have part-time people have full-time jobs. It's a real juggling act. The full-time people, at least you know they're gonna be here. There are some new regulations that come out from the Illinois Training Board. For example, auxiliary police are almost non-existent anymore. They will not allow auxiliary police or volunteer police to do police work anymore. They can stand there with a vest on and direct traffic or something like that. So that eliminated a lot. A part-time officer has to be supervised by full-time. I mean, so those are some regulations. Obviously, we're down to one officer. We have another officer off on medical, who was a full-time officer, to be off for quite a few number of months because of his medical reason. And when we do have a crime occur and we need to investigate it, that's pulling somebody off the street who's senior and seeing if we can get a full-timer. If you can't get a full-timer, then of course you have to ward off. I mean, see if we can get a part-timer. If you can't get a part-timer, you got a ward or full-timer to work, and that causes it over. So just giving you ideas of where that overtime comes from.
Can't we have somebody that, a part-timer that is given a permanent part-time position for the 6 or 8 months that we know we have a medical issue?
That's something I thought we talked about as executive,
Okay.
but still you have to regulate those hours. The Illinois Training Board, if that person goes over so many hours, then you have to start training them to be a full-time officer, give them all the benefits that come along that the village offers, so it depends on how many hours, but we certainly could do. That's what I was gonna kind of suggest for this period. Maybe we have one part-time officer who right now does not have a full-time job and did request, maybe he can cover his half of the midnight shift as a steady diet, but watch his hours, because we can't, for a little more money, and it becomes like a part-time, non-permanent position.
Well, and then as far as the impending trial that's coming up, I would assume there would be some way to have that officer work days instead of a regular shift?
Well, then you gotta cover,
Right, their
Yeah.
shift with the part-timer.
if you can get a part-time.
Right.
It's
But
really
I would
good.
think we would want to plan ahead for that, since we know it's gonna be a multi-month process.
One thing I did learn, and I never bring up past or where I came from or anything like that, because it's not fair, because it's different at different places. I'm learning it is more difficult to manage a smaller department with part-time people than it was for me to manage a bigger department with full-time people. It's a real general, but yes, that's something.
Because the minimum of 4 hours, they're paid 4 hours for
It's a
court.
minimum contractual issue.
Contractually, if they show up for court, it's 4 hours,
Correct.
so, and then it's at time, is it a time and a half?
Yes, it is.
So it's not only 4 hours minimum, it's time and a half.
Correct.
So it's, looking at the 82,000 that we had in 2010, my expectation would be, what reasons, why couldn't we go back to that scenario?
Well, and I would like to see that as well, obviously. But I think the concern I have in under budgeting
That's
this
what I was gonna bring up.
is we're down one police officer and we have one police officer off. And, at the end of the day, it's an estimate, it's a budget, and you
Right.
can't predict certain things. And, I don't want to be unrealistic and under budgeted and then all of a sudden blow that budget. I would rather work with Frank to try to come up with a realistic budget, hopefully close to $100,000, and to stay within that budget. And hopefully, if we can get $20,000 below that, wonderful. I push that, but I'm a little concerned because I think our situation is a little different now than it was back then, and I'd be concerned to under budget the.
But I just want to know what is different.
And another thing to
We're
let you
down
know,
2 police officers, where back then we weren't.
No, I know, but that, I understand that, but you have a lower wage rate, you have a 20% rate of pay on a part-timer.
But we also
you
have
don't
union
owe them.
contracts. Well, we'll talk about that in a
Yeah,
second.
so-
But we have union
yeah.
contracts. There's
Well,
also.
I read the contract, we have every right in the world to do what we're doing with part-time labor.
I know
It's just getting filled.
Yeah,
Correct.
so it's managing the part-time labor effectively for
I
the
agree.
part-time officer.
I agree.
So we have the tool set, we have to use it the right way.
And another thing we have to understand, and not to, I don't want to belabor this because we will discuss this, but the Illinois Training Board now, there's a lot of new requirements out there. For example, something that's fairly ironic, to be a juvenile officer, you have to be certified. And if you bring a juvenile into here, if it's simple, you're just gonna bring him in curfew and release him to mom and dad, it's fine. But if you bring him in for a crime and you're gonna question him, and as ironic as this sounds, a juvenile officer has to be present to protect that juvenile's rights. Even though this is, the police department is here to arrest and prosecute this juvenile, under the state law, you have to have your certified juvenile officer come in to be present, to protect that juvenile's rights from the officer who's gonna do the question. I mean, it's really silly, but those are the laws. And now they're requiring, if you have a homicide, you have to have a certified homicide investigator, who's the lead investigator. You just can't have, like in my day, when I was assigned to detectives or whatever crime came about, you were given it. Well, today, if you don't have that certified homicide investigator, you're gonna have a lot of trouble in court. It's really crazy, and these new laws are coming up, the training board, so that makes it difficult. And it can't be a part-time officer, who's a juvenile officer, or a homicide investigator, or whatever the case may be. So then you gotta call those people in. Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's just that.
Those are my comments about police.
But no problem.
Okay.
And, I would ask you also to take a look at, to the extent you can, like supplies, training, without like the following of the bargaining agreement, to see if we can consider something there. But, what, you'll have time to come back with, but I'd like to, without setting this as a line in stone, but, to the extent if we don't get to it, because we're not gonna finish it, probably won't even finish discussion of this today. But if within, by let's say next Friday, anybody have suggestions, just along the lines here as what Matt had done about, I would like to see this, just a reduction in a particular line item. If we can get that into, Dave, by close of business next Friday, and we work it into a draft.
New draft.
Yeah.
Now, just a kind of question, and because of open meetings, things and things, the suggestions that each trustee have and contact me with will only be with me. So I will, if I'm understanding you correctly, everything I get from every trustee will be implemented into the next draft
Right.
of the budget.
Yeah, I still would ask you to, we can certainly share on the budget.
And just to clarify, if a trustee calls and says, I would like to see 5,000 removed, is that going to be an automatic from a particular line item?
You can.
You
don't even say 5,000, you say 10,000.
And I also can't have 45 drafts going on.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, we automatically put that in there, no, that's.
Maybe we could do a
I think we
suggestion
can,
list.
I can be the compilation person, and at the Thursday, the 27th meeting, whatever is discussed can be, if I have, like I'm writing down right now what people are saying, I can make these changes fairly quickly in this budget. I can have a draft, whatever's agreed upon at that meeting will be the final budget. The next day, I can have a new budget printed up, and the next Monday after that is when we have to have the appropriations ordinance available for review before the next meeting. And as you know, I use the budget to prepare the appropriation ordinance.
Right, and you be the compilation person, so submit it, Dave can compile it.
And I can do another memo even that says trustee, blah, 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 and we'll go from there. If I could have that by next Friday, it would be in the Tuesday's board packet for the special meeting.
I have a question for you with regard to, since Nan's finished with police. Anybody else have something on the police
Real
part?
quickly, Frank, if we don't buy the new car, I know in the memo we talk about selling a police car, so we will not be
No.
We would not be selling a police car then?
Right, the two cars that we're selling now that was approved by the board.
Well, I know that's different, but.
No, we would not. We would
Okay,
be.
so remember, we would not be selling, did we account in that, for any revenue from selling? I didn't see
I
that.
believe the only thing we put in revenue was figuring a couple $1,000.
I think we put 1,000 for the
Yeah.
cars, we get more than 1,000, because the minimum we'll take is 3,000 for two cars.
Right, but then if the police car would be in red, it had 150-some thousand miles, so we would get that for it.
There's more than $1,000 we brought
And
in
there's
as police
two-
seizure, right, we should get more.
Right, yes. We always do it at a little low because you don't know. You hate to do that at the high end and then come in on the low end.
Okay.
We put 2,500 for sale of capital assets. Are we gonna get that for that squad? I'm not sure. On the other hand, police seizure, on page 2A of revenues, police seizure, which is at the top of the other income, we've only budgeted 1,000. I'm under the understanding that's a Mercedes. My guess is we're gonna get more than 1,000. But
It's old, but.
we never know.
But I think the ordinance says we'll get at least 2 for that and 1 for the.
Right, what we did is we did the Edmunds.com type thing, and then we put a minimum of what we'll take, but we lowered it than what Edmunds
So
did.
Brian, your point was we're taking 2,500 out if we don't do the car for 30,000, so it's really 27,500.
Right, but then we gotta add in a little bit, because we only have 1,000 budgeted for revenue for this police seizure, but we're talking about a minimum of 3, so we're 2,000, I mean, I know it's nickels and dimes, we're close to a balanced budget, I wanna
Right.
see what we can do to get there.
But I think we passed the seizure already, right?
Right, yes,
right.
Yeah.
That'll go under 29.
So the only other major category that I had in my notes was the whole area of, Frank and I have talked about this, I'm not sure if you shared this with you there, but purchase services, professional services. So we do business with a number of professional,
Are we talking about the police now?
well, it's under every single different area.
Okay.
We're talking about audit, legal, we're talking about anything where we have some type of professional service. So we talked about the legal discussion where we have 81.5, I believe, for the legal total over the 2 budgets for fire and police and then general accounts. So when we talk about professional services, we have an audit, we have an engineering firm, we also have a cleaning firm, we have an electrical maintenance firm that does the street lights. We have a number of suppliers that perform a great deal of service for us. Some are professional services, some are other kinds of services. So what I would like to do and challenge the group here and the team to do here is to look at, I know we can't do this day one, because we will not be able to do this immediately, but all of those contracts and agreements need to be reviewed and renegotiated. We have a legal contract